Well, good morning and welcome to our second Creation Care session. And I'm delighted to welcome Colin this morning, who is manager of the West Wales Biodiversity Information Centre. Hello, Colin.
Yeah, how you doing?
Nice to see you. So, Colin, you've got a long title there. What does your role entail?
Well, we shorten that to WWBIC, a lot easier to say.
It is, isn't it?
So what we are is a local environmental record centre. The purpose of that is that we collect and we collate, manage and we disseminate biodiversity information. We're just a small team of 4 people that I manage, and we operate from our office, which I'm sitting in now, which is just outside Whitland. We are one of 4 of these centres in Wales. We cover the entire geographic area of Wales. We work closely together. There are actually over 60 in the UK as a whole. And we're not widely known. We certainly are within the sector that we work in. And I'm pleased to say that we are regarded quite highly, particularly in Wales. We have some very efficient systems in Wales. In terms of the information, it's mostly biological records. We can talk a little bit about that. But we do use other information as well, habitat information and protected sites, that kind of thing.
Wow, that's amazing, because we have such a diverse range of habitats in Wales. Do you go for everything from coast to cliff to mountain to middle of industrial parks?
Yeah, everything. We focus mainly on what they regard as priority habitats, the semi-natural habitats. So when we're putting information out, doesn't usually include all habitats. For example, improved farmland. So where grazing is happening and the land's been constantly improved with fertilizers, etc. We wouldn't include that. The interest is mainly in the natural and semi-natural habitats that exist in the landscape.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So the reason I've asked Colin to join me today is we're looking at doing a growing project across our LMA. And we're looking to make our church and surrounding environment as eco-friendly as possible. For our growing project, we'll involve the land owned by some of the individual churches and looking at how we can make those areas more beneficial to the animals, insects, birds, and of course all the people who also visit the areas, and also more friendly for the people in the communities who are living adjacent to the land. What we want to ensure is that before we start to dig, plant or change anything, that we've fully understood what the unique area is all about and what's there already. So we don't want to dig up something that's already quite precious. We want to make sure that we don't change anything when things didn't need to be changed for the better. They were already as good as they should be from there. Maybe we should leave some things alone after all. So Colin, how do you help with biodiversity?
So our particular function, our unique function as a local environmental record centre is taking of sightings of wildlife. These are biological records, which consist of the 4 main elements with a few others, which are very helpful and simple. It's who, what, when and where. So who saw it? What did you see? When did you see it? And where was it? So that gives us the information then to map the records. And we add value to these records by categorizing the level of protection in law. So you may be familiar with Wildlife and Countryside Act, which offers protection to certain species. Wales has something called the Section 7 list in the Environment Act Wales. So yeah, we provide then, once we've done this, we can then provide the information to public sector bodies, commercial organisations where changes of land use or for the purposes of conservation or land management with that in view. So it's quite important to know that over 70% of the records that we hold come from volunteers. They're not the result of surveys by Natural Resources Wales or other type organisations. They are volunteers ranging from local experts who will send us perhaps a regular input of data to once a year, to just general members of the public on all sorts of levels, which you can do that at. I'll talk about that later. The records then are shared with County Council, Natural Resources Wales, Welsh Water, lots of other organisations, and with the ecologists who work for developers when they're looking to.
Brilliant. It's
to
interesting
build.
that you say that you don't have to be specially trained. So if I see a hawk moth caterpillar, for example, that would be something that would be simply because I've seen it and recognised it. That'd be something I could log. Oh, okay.
Yeah. When it comes to things that you're doubtful of, a photograph's always helpful if you add it to the systems. And most of the systems that we've got now, you can do that with. It's helpful. It's worth saying that there are a network of experts known as Vice County Recorders. These, dedicated volunteers do what they can to verify records. So if it was something common, like for example that hawk moth caterpillar, and it was very easy, very distinctive, they might say, well, yes, we can take that as verifiable, and we've got confident that that's correct. Where that can't be done, a photograph can help. Not in all cases. I mean, some just really impossible to distinguish to species level. Some groups, but, things like butterflies and such like can be easy.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. So you've been collecting this data for some time, Colin, and this is all in your database now, is it?
Yeah, we have a biological records database, a specialist database, yeah.
And how long has that data been collected for?
I think the oldest record is 1890s. That's historical records that go back. Most of the record centres, I think, would find that they go back that far, round about that far. But there are not many. These are records we've got out of old paper records. I mean, the record centres in Wales. I'm just trying to think now, because I can remember that we've had the 10-year anniversary, the 20-year anniversary. Wow. So they do go back that long. We were the last to be established, actually, out of the 4 record centres in Wales. But it was quite far-seeing that from the beginning, when the Mid Wales Record Centre was established, I think it was just post-97, so around about 97 to 2000. Then the plan was that it would be a continuous network for the whole of the nation, the Welsh nation.
That's tremendous. So our church site, so in Bro St Clair, we've 11 churches, just about to go up to 13 churches. So our church sites have obviously been left fairly untouched for sometimes hundreds of years. So do you include those already in your surveys?
If someone has recorded, there will be, and we can have a look at that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can record down to very specific areas, a church and churchyard, and the surrounding, I don't know, 100 meters or 500 meters or whatever, we can do that. We just bet that's what would happen if someone was, for example, doing some work on the roof and wanted to do some bat survey work. So they might come to us and ask us, what records we have. So, yeah, it does depend on what people have submitted.
Yeah.
And one of the caveats with everything, and it's in our terms and conditions when we release the data, is that just because it's not in our database doesn't mean to say it's not there.
Good point.
It's very dependent. Our data is very biased on who is sending and where they've been, rather than what's out there in the wider countryside.
Oh, that's really interesting. It's nice to know that if we do some surveys around our churches, where this data is actually going to go. As well, it's also nice to know how you're going to actually process it and use it. Is there a chance we could have a look at your database?
Yeah, sure. you let me share the screen.
I've made you co-host, so hopefully that should work.
Okay, for some reason it's disappeared. Let me just open up the tool. Okay, let's try again. There we are. Can you see that screen?
It's just
Lorna?
coming through. Ah, there you go. Perfect. We're in.
Okay. So the 4 record centres in Wales combine the data. I mean, we do some local work here, but we actually combine our data. So we've got over 3 million records for West Wales, biological records. And across the whole of Wales, there's over 14 million in this shared database. And the shared database is serves this website, which we've developed. It's ADERIN, it's the LERC Wales Biodiversity Information Reporting Database. It's used by lots of partners. They have access to it, but we also have a public access level. So you don't need the required logins that we and the partners have. You can actually start to explore what's in your area and look at species distributions across Wales. So if we look at what's in your area, and if you could pick a church site would be good, Lorna.
Oh, how about St. Martin's in Larne?
Okay, well, I'm sure I can find Larne. I just hope that the site works reasonably quickly.
We're used to Zooming now, aren't we? So, so we know it
Yes.
can be hit and miss.
You might have to guide me to the church. It'll load a more detailed ordnance survey map. Here we
Yeah,
are.
it's a little bit north of the town, so along that pink road.
Should show up on an OS map.
Yeah.
So we've come to a junction there.
Mm,
Shall I come out a bit?
yes, please.
Sorry, I'm going to lean in to see what
It's a
I can
lovely
see.
old map.
Oh, there's a church there. Is that it?
That'll be it, I imagine. Yeah. Oh, yep, there you go, because it backs onto that green road, so perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
We're very lucky because we've got the churchyard around the church, and then across the little bridge where the little road is in a secondary churchyard, and that's very famous, of course, because Dylan Thomas is buried there.
Yeah.
But it's got a large amount of ground there, so quite a diverse range.
As it happens, both these crosses are in the same square. So
the other one's a chapel, I think, so that's nice. Cool.
Right. Okay. So we found the location we want. I'm just going to select that square. And it's given me a grid reference for that square. This is what we would use.
Gotcha.
Into records. We will put everything in under a grid. Okay, and just by pressing go, what we're looking for here is at the public level, you don't get precise locations of the species. You will get a list. Oh,
wow, look at that.
So what we've got here are 560 records from 266 different non-sensitive species. Now, that requires a bit of explanation. And what it's saying here is any sensitive species within your search area will have been removed from the results. There's a thing called a sensitive features list, which is published by NRW. That's Natural Resources Wales. This is redacts, if you like, information on certain features on certain species. So that would be nests, badger sets, otter holts, because the system can't distinguish which those are from the records. Unfortunately, we cannot display any badger or otter or bat records in these searches, these public level searches.
Makes sense, actually, to do that, yeah.
So there are, here we've got the species list here, and you can change these orders.
brilliant. So,
So you
lots of
can have a
lovely
look around.
birds.
Yeah, I was expecting there would be a lot of birds, yeah, other plants too. There we go.
Brilliant. And so quite a
Uh,
lot of, did I see an orchid there at one point? I think I did.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Yeah.
So we've got good plant records for that particular 1K square.
Brilliant. And this is just people sending in the data to you. So spending a bit of time in the site, recording what they see that they recognize, or asking you to help them with identification, and
Yeah,
then logging it on the site. That's really good, isn't it?
and people can do this themselves. They can either use an app, which you can download from the App Store, and all you have to do is just search Lercwales app, and just if you look at the top there, this is the terran.lercwales.org.uk.
Brilliant.
So people want to make a note of that.
And I'll share that link as well on the bottom of this video, so people can
That's
follow
great.
it through.
And then there are other tools which will allow you to record. So each record centre has if you go to their website, and ours is www.bic.org.uk, you can find other ways of recording. As I say, there's the app, there is the online recording site, which is within our website. So you can get straight to that. And if you register, you can sort of start to build up your own records. It will show you your own records for a particular area.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
So I'm just going back. The other thing is the distribution map. And with the distribution map, you can actually look at some of those species. So I would have expected it won't show you them in detail, but typing in the scientific name, should be capital, second one, but anyhow. So if you typed in otter, it would come up with the same thing. Yeah. You get a selection of species to look for. So giving you a Wales distribution. So what we'll try and do, it's telling me that.
Oh, okay. So I definitely want to see them. I should head toward Porthmadog.
Yes, or Stackpole.
Or Stackpole, yeah.
Yeah, it's got a lot of records down there. Not many down there. Now that's quite surprising, I would have said. Yeah.
So that could just be that people are seeing them but didn't know to actually register them, maybe.
Yeah, so we've got 31 down at Stackpole, but only one covering the estuary and the upper estuary there. So yeah, not many records there. So under recorded, I would suspect for that particular location.
Okay. And it's such a recognizable species, isn't it? That's the thing about them, but they are a little bit shy. So.
Yeah, a lot of the records come as faint otter poo. In other words, it's once you've seen it, you can usually recognize it fairly clearly.
Brilliant.
See it again.
Well, that's really easy to use, this website. So I'm glad you've shown us this. That's going to make us a bit easier from there. With regards to,
it's a good start. It's a good start.
It's definitely. With regards to doing, thank you. With regards to doing things like surveys, what we want to do is encourage people to familiarize themselves generally with the different species that are around. Is there any recommendations on how we can do that? Do you have any great leaflets or booklets or?
We don't. We have, the things that we do, if we were doing an event, we'll take some identification guides. And the shelf across there, I've got quite a pile of them, but we tend to take out the Field Studies Council guides. They're quite inexpensive. You've probably seen them. Hang on a sec, I'll just get one.
Oh, okay. I feel like I've sent Colin for a shopping list, but I'm sure we're okay.
These are obtainable from the Field Studies. Oh, that's not a, there we are, there's one of them. So,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
so they're
Yeah.
great for beginners.
Dragonflies.
They're inexpensive. This one was the caterpillar one. So you get your easy and not so easy to distinguish caterpillars. And you can buy a batch of them and get a discount. So,
Oh, brilliant. We'll have a look for that.
So they're a good starting point.
Cool. So Colin, you've been doing this a long time. What species, when you see reported, gets you excited? What's the thing that you would like us to specifically tell you about if we come across it?
I think
common name, please, not Latin.
I don't think there's much that is rare. I mean, it's always great to hear about ospreys, as I said earlier. That a friend of mine saw an osprey down at Larne. It was just this weekend, just last weekend. He was there. It's great to hear, but actually, what we can value as good records are things that we expect to be under-recorded. Things like adders, grass snakes, toads are incredibly under-recorded. I mean, I see them in my garden all the time, and I record them. I generally record them once a year, which is enough for a common species. Like, for example, moles and rabbits are really under-recorded. But you see molehills, you don't have to see the animal. You can see a molehill and you know it's a mole. And those sort of things can be recorded once a year. They tend to be under-recorded. But so if we get records of grass snake, such things like that. Some of the more obscure things don't excite me because I don't know what they are. But that's all to do with the experts. But I know that there are species moving in now to this area. I mean, you may see, for example, down the estuaries, you may see great egrets now coming in. That which is of interest. They have gone to Llanelli.
The wetland centre.
Yeah. So little egrets are now becoming quite common and well established. Great egrets now are beginning to move north. And with the invertebrates, there is change there. Things that we really want to know about, in fact, UK-wide, some of the more nastier invasive species. And at the moment, there's a push on keeping an eye open for Asian hornet. This is a particularly voracious hornet species that kills other flying insects.
The honeybee raiders, aren't they?
Yeah, they kill, and they'll take dragonflies even. They're quite a fearsome beast. So yeah, but it's all of interest. It's all of interest. Common, and I mean, there is an adage which says recorded once and then it gets used many times because we constantly putting that out, that information out. Also, your record is held in perpetuity, so you've made a contribution, which hopefully will be there for many, many, many years to come. The other thing is, if you don't record it, no one knows that it was ever seen. So you might think that's interesting, or that's nice to see. That there's a pyramidal orchid or a bee orchid or something like that you've seen, something that's fairly easy to identify. But again, if it's not recorded, no one's aware of it. But I'm sort of aware that as far as churchyard, do you mind if I go on?
Please carry on.
I was thinking about what you were saying earlier on about what you wanted to do, and I think that it's important that, as I say, we know what's been seen in the area. But in terms of rarities, those kind of species perhaps you might find in and around churchyards. And one of the species groups, if you like, is wax cap fungi. Others are lichens, harder to identify, admittedly. So it'd be nice to get some of the experts down to have a look at those. But in the case of wax cap fungi, we are very interested in them. The local recorder here in Pembrokeshire has been doing some DNA work on fungi. But churchyards are really good places to look for them in the autumn. So we're coming into that season now. The reason being that the ground, largely, the greater part of the ground is undisturbed, and it's mown, and the clippings are removed. They're not left there, they're not mulched in. So it tends to deplete the nutrient level of the ground, of the soil, which is actually a more natural state than improved grassland, which is having fertilizer put on it. So yeah, it's good to keep an eye out for them. There is information on the internet to identify things. There is a local wax cap guide that was produced by the local fungus recording group here, which is really useful. I think you'd have to write to them to get a copy. But, you know, that's an expensive but useful book. Yeah. So
maybe we can invite them over to have a look for us.
Yes. Yeah, we've got quite a, I mean, at Nevern churchyard, which I visited myself last autumn, was rife with wax cap fungi.
And that's a nice one for all of us to look for, isn't it? In any age, once we know what we're looking for.
Yeah, that's one of them. Can you see that?
Oh, I was wondering about that. Lovely pinky red colour.
Yeah, that's a Scarlet Wax Cap up there.
How big is that roughly?
Right. At risk of being wrong, I would say you'd be looking at something from 1 centimetre to absolute maximum 3 centimetres, but you would be 1 to 3 centimetres, and that would be quite, that would be quite a decent sized specimen.
Oh, fantastic!
But they tend to come up as little buttons in the grass, and then open out to perhaps 1 or 2 centimetres, and wax cap for an obvious, called wax caps for an obvious reason.
Okay, they look waxy.
Yes. There's one that smells of mouse pea.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll try not to find that one then.
Its common name is that. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I can't thank you enough for your time, Colin. It's been really interesting. And as always, whenever I look at any part of creation and I see how many things there actually are out there, it's just a complete fascination for me. And I do hope that the people who are watching this today will feel the same, and also full of passion about not just going out and observing, but actually recording what's there, because we can see how important it is, not just for our generation, but for the generations to come. I guess sometimes you look at data 50 years ago and compare it to today. Do you, Colin?
We do. We've been asked to do some mapping for certain species in Pembrokeshire to look at range contraction. And we did some last year for the local bird group, and taking known breeding records. And it is interesting to see how they're breeding, although there's presence of certain birds, so they appear to be plentiful. The actual resident breeding populations have contracted. So having the experts and having the right data enables us to sort of show that visually on the maps.
Data's key, isn't it? Without that data, we're just making it up as we go along. So no, that's really helpful. I'll say thank you very much, Colin, and I'll be hopefully seeing you at some of our churches in the autumn.
Thanks, it's been a pleasure, and do keep in touch. Yeah, keep in touch, and we'll, as you say, hopefully we'll get over to one of your churchyard sites and get something happening.
I look forward to it.
Okay.
Today's reading I've chosen from Revelations. The angel also showed me the river of the water of life, sparkling like crystal, and coming from the throne of God and of the Lamb, and flowing down the middle of the city streets. On each side of the river was the tree of life, which bears fruit 12 times a year, once each month, and its leaves are for the healing of the nations. Let us pray together to the Lord. Dear Lord, we thank you for the world in which we live. We thank you for the creations that share the planet with us, from the largest to the smallest, to those which provide beauty for the eye, food for the stomach, medicine for the ill, and oxygen for the world. We thank you for this strange and wonderful place we call home. Help us to know this world better, and help us to be more gentle. Show us the way, Lord, to see the world as a gift to be shared for all time and with all of creation. Remove the greed from our hearts and soften our hearts so that we have compassion with the world. Help us to defeat cruelty, manipulation, and by doing so become the better people that you want us to be. Help us to remember and give thanks with humility and love. Amen. Thank you for joining us today. Hope to see you again next week.